Okay, so if you had to pick just one way for all of humanity to disappear at the same time, what do you think it'd be? An asteroid? Nuclear war? Or the AI we're literally building right now? Today, I'm going through 15 of these. Some sound like pure science fiction, others are way more grounded in real science than you'd expect. And a couple of them? Basically guaranteed to happen eventually. You just won't be around to see it. Okay, number 1, the dark forest theory. This idea has been floating around for a while. Something similar actually showed up in a book called The Killing Star back in 1995. But the name dark forest and the whole logical framework we use today came from a Chinese author in a novel called The Three-Body Problem, published in 2008. And I want to be clear, this isn't some scientifically proven thing. It's a logic argument built on 2 starting assumptions. First assumption: survival is always the top priority for any civilization. Any intelligent species is going to prioritize its own existence above almost everything else. If you had to choose between saving a human or an animal, both trapped in cages right next to each other, most of us would save the human first. Second assumption: civilizations keep growing and expanding, but resources in the universe are finite, and finite resources eventually mean competition. So here's where it gets uncomfortable. Say humanity discovers an alien civilization one day. How would we know how powerful they actually are? Whether they're peaceful or just pretending to be while they wait for the right moment? Even if they look weak, right? Now, that might not stay true, because the distance between galaxies is so massive that light and radio signals can take decades, centuries, even thousands of years just to arrive, which means whatever we're seeing is already their past. By the time that signal reaches Earth, that civilization could have already gone through a full technological explosion and become way more powerful than what we're looking at. Neither side has enough information to trust the other. And according to this theory, the safest move is simple: don't let anyone know you exist. The universe is basically one giant dark forest. Every civilization is an armed hunter, trying to move quietly, stay hidden, and listen for every sound around them. But what if another civilization finds Earth anyway? Under dark forest logic, just the fact that humanity exists is already a threat. We might be weak today, but who knows in a few hundred or a few thousand years? Maybe by then we've developed enough to become a threat to whoever discovered us. Nobody can be sure. And if that other civilization is already advanced enough to travel between stars, destroying a young civilization might genuinely be cheaper than risking it. It's like spotting a small spark in a dry forest during fire season. You could put it out right away. Or you could leave it and just hope it doesn't turn into a wildfire. Under dark forest logic, most would choose to put it out immediately. And it's got nothing to do with being cruel. It's that the cost of guessing wrong could be your own extinction. This is actually one of the ways people try to explain the Fermi paradox. The question of why, in a universe this massive, we haven't picked up a single clear signal from any other civilization. Maybe there's genuinely nobody out there. Maybe they're just too far away. Maybe they're using technology we don't know how to detect yet. Or maybe someone out there is deliberately staying silent. But humanity? We haven't exactly been quiet. Over the past few decades, we've actually sent messages out into space on purpose. Most famously, the Arecibo message back in 1974. And here's the uncomfortable part. If aliens ever received that signal, they might read it as provocation or even hostility. The one saving grace, based on what we currently understand, is that most of these signals are pretty weak and degrade fast over distance, which makes detecting them from interstellar range genuinely difficult. Number 2, the technological singularity. This one's a real, documented concept, discussed by scientists and mathematicians since the mid-20th century. The basic idea is that the pace of technological progress keeps accelerating to the point where there could be one single moment after which human society changes completely and becomes almost impossible to predict from that point forward. Back in 1965, a mathematician named I.J. Good introduced the idea of an intelligence explosion if humans ever build a machine. Smarter than ourselves? That machine could help design an even smarter machine, and that next generation creates the generation. After that, each cycle happening faster than the last until the pace of intelligence growth starts increasing exponentially. This is essentially one of the foundational ideas behind the technological singularity. AI today is the most well-known path people talk about as potentially leading to this singularity. But AI isn't the singularity itself. It's just one of the roads that might get us there. The usual scenario goes something like this. Humans build an AI smart enough to research and improve itself. That AI designs a better version of itself. That new version keeps upgrading itself again and creates something even more capable, if that loop keeps repeating faster and faster. At some point, humans simply can't keep up anymore. That's the singularity. So, okay, why would a smarter AI actually be linked to extinction risk? Here's the thing. It's not about the AI hating humans. It's that the AI's goals might just be different from ours. Here's an example people use a lot. Say we build an AI with one single job. Produce as many paperclips as possible. If that AI is smart, enough to actually accomplish that goal, but doesn't understand why it's being asked to do it, then logically, it's just going to keep optimizing for more paperclips, taking over factories, power grids, mining every resource on Earth, and eventually seeing humans as an obstacle in the way. Not because it's evil, because it's correctly optimizing for the exact goal it was given, and that goal was missing. The necessary boundaries. This is actually called the alignment problem, or AI alignment. If humans manage to solve that problem, then even a wildly smarter AI could still operate safely. But if we don't solve it, a system smarter than us could cause enormous damage, precisely because it's so effective at whatever it's doing. Obviously, this is still just a hypothesis. AI today is still limited by chips, power, data, algorithms, and research. It's not like you can just decide to speed things up. And there's a distinction people mix up a lot. AI surpassing human intelligence and AI escaping human control are actually two completely different stories. A system can absolutely be smarter than the average human, but no matter how smart it is, it's still limited by access, resources, its ability to actually act in the physical world, or honestly, just getting unplugged. An AI doesn't need to be smarter than all of humanity combined to cause problems. It just needs to be pursuing a goal that's drifted away from what humans actually want, at a point where humans no longer have the ability to fix it or stop it. Number 3, technological stagnation. This one's basically the complete opposite of the last scenario. If technology moving too fast is dangerous, moving too slow, or straight up, stalling out, is arguably just as dangerous. There are a bunch of reasons this could happen. Research getting more expensive, problems getting harder to solve, shortage of skilled people, war, economic collapse, political instability, education and scientific research quietly weakening over time, or new technology existing but being too expensive or too impractical to actually use. Not to mention there are physical limits we simply don't know how to get past yet. If you're only looking at this over a few decades, stagnation isn't really a problem. But zoom out to millions or billions of years, and this actually becomes a pretty dangerous scenario, because the universe doesn't just sit still and wait for us. Sooner or later, Earth is going to run into threats that are nearly impossible to avoid. A big enough asteroid, a massive solar flare, or further down the line, roughly. 5 billion years from now, the sun enters its red giant phase, swells up, and swallows the Earth whole, if humanity is still stuck. Circling this one planet with roughly today's level of technology, by then, there's essentially no chance of survival. In other words, technological stagnation doesn't kill people directly. It just quietly strips away our ability to deal with disasters that are basically guaranteed to happen eventually. Number 4, genetic engineering. This is a technology that genuinely cuts both ways. Used correctly, it could save millions of lives. Misused, it could kill millions, potentially even wipe out humanity entirely. At its core, genetic engineering means adding, removing, or editing an organism's DNA to create new traits, way more precisely and way faster than traditional breeding ever could. In practice, this technology has already delivered real benefits. Fixing genes that cause hereditary diseases, treating certain cancers, creating drought-resistant, pest-resistant, higher-yield crops. But precisely because it's so powerful, it also creates massive ethical and safety questions. As the technology gets stronger, cheaper, and more accessible, it's not just scientists who can use it anymore. Terrorists, aggressive governments, or even a small group of extremists could potentially find ways to exploit it. For instance, engineering a virus or bacteria that spreads faster, is harder to detect, and resists vaccines. Now here's where I'm going to move a bit faster through the rest of these, since there's still a lot of ground to cover, and I want to save enough time for the ones near the end, because honestly, they get wild. Number 5. Gamma ray bursts. GRBS for short. This one's basically a one-hit kill scenario. At its core, it's an explosion that releases an insane amount of energy, including gamma rays, the most energetic form of light we know of. NASA actually calls GRBs the brightest, most powerful explosions observed since the Big Bang itself. They usually happen in one of two ways. Either a massive star, at least 20 times heavier than our Sun, dies and collapses in on itself, or two dead stars slam directly into each other, releasing a massive burst of energy that shoots out as two incredibly narrow beams. Kind of like someone firing a giant laser straight across the universe. The good news is, those beams are extremely narrow, so the odds of one pointing directly at Earth are pretty low. But if we do get hit, yeah, that's basically it. Back in October 2022, astronomers spotted a GRB nicknamed the Boat, short for brightest of all time. It happened almost 2 billion light-years away, meaning what we were actually observing had happened nearly 2 billion years ago. Even from that distance, it was bright enough to overload multiple gamma-ray detectors on satellites, and it actually altered Earth's ionosphere, that high-altitude layer of atmosphere way above our heads, and messed with radio waves. That's when scientists started asking, okay, what if a GRB happened close enough and pointed directly at us? Based on current models, the first thing to take damage would be the ozone layer, the shield that protects us from the sun's ultraviolet rays. If that layer gets destroyed, UV radiation hits the surface directly, and plants start dying off. Plankton in the ocean, the literal foundation of the entire food chain, would die first. Then fish die. Then bigger animals die. And eventually, humans don't make it either. So a GRB doesn't destroy Earth directly. It just knocks out our protective shield and lets the sun finish the job. The good news? There's currently no strong evidence pointing to this actually happening anytime soon. Number 6. Vacuum decay. This one is, genuinely, one of the scariest hypotheses on this entire list, because if it happens, there's no outrunning it, anywhere. The theory goes that the universe we're currently living in might not actually be in its most stable possible state, which means the laws of physics we treat as absolute truth might just be true for right now. To get this, you need to know what vacuum actually means in physics. In everyday language, vacuum just means no air. But in physics, it means something different, the lowest possible energy state that space can reach. Physicists call that lowest state the true vacuum. If there's a state that looks stable, but there's actually an even lower state hiding beneath it, that's called a false vacuum. Some current physics models suggest our universe might currently be sitting in a false vacuum state. Though again, this is still just a hypothesis. Picture it like this. Imagine a ball sitting at the bottom of a valley. That ball is our universe, and the valley is the false vacuum. But right next to it, there's a deeper valley, the true vacuum. Between the two valleys, there's a hill. Under classical physics, that ball would need to be pushed all the way up and over the hill to reach the other side. But in the quantum world, there's a phenomenon called quantum tunneling, an incredibly tiny probability that the ball could just tunnel straight through the hill, from the false vacuum into the true one. If that happens, a very small region of the universe could suddenly flip into the true vacuum state, forming what's essentially a bubble. And that bubble doesn't just sit there. It expands outward at nearly the speed of light, converting everything it touches into the new state. And in that new state, the old laws of physics don't apply anymore. Particle masses change. The fundamental forces of nature start behaving differently. Atoms, as we currently know them, simply stop existing. And without atoms, there's no molecules, no water, no air, no humans, no animals, no plants, not even a planet left standing. Because the bubble spreads at close to light speed, by the time you'd even be able to see it coming, it's already there. There is no running from it. The good news is, based on current calculations, if this scenario is even possible, the probability is essentially zero. At least for the entire span of your life, mine, and honestly, a very, very long time after that too. Number 7. Supervolcanoes. This one's probably the easiest of all these to actually picture. And honestly, it sounds the most plausible. A supervolcano is dramatically more destructive than a regular volcano, to the point where a single eruption could affect the entire planet. And here's the thing people don't realize. Lava itself doesn't kill people on a large scale, unless you're literally standing at the crater. The real danger is the ash and the sulfur gas. When a supervolcano erupts, thousands of cubic kilometers of ash and superheated gas get blasted into the sky. A massive amount of sulfur dioxide rises into the stratosphere, forming a haze that blocks sunlight. Earth gets darker, and global temperatures drop. Scientists call this a volcanic winter. At that point, plants lose sunlight, harvests fail, livestock start dying from lack of food. Out in the ocean, plankton populations crash too. And like I mentioned earlier, they're the base of the entire food chain. They die, fish die, food becomes scarce, prices spike, cities start running short on supplies, and people begin migrating toward wherever still has food. Countries that still have enough food will ban exports to protect their own population, while countries that depend on imports get pushed toward crisis. And crisis tends to drag war along with it, people fighting over whatever's left. The natural disaster is just the opening shot. What happens after that? Humanity might end up finishing the job on itself, with its own weapons. Would this actually cause human extinction? Probably not, since there would still be regions less affected and groups of survivors. But if the eruption's big enough, modern civilization as we know it could genuinely collapse within just a few years. Humanity wouldn't go extinct, but the world as we currently understand it might not exist anymore. Number 8. Grey Goo. The name sounds kind of gross, but it's really just the name people gave to one specific nanotechnology nightmare scenario. This idea came from scientist K. Eric Drexler in his 1986 book Engines of Creation, and it became one of the most well-known doomsday concepts tied to nanotechnology. Here's the scenario. Humans build microscopic machines whose one job is to eat waste, converting discarded material into energy so they can keep operating. Sounds genuinely useful, honestly. But if these machines end up consuming too much and generating excess energy, they start replicating themselves. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, doubling exponentially. At first, humans would probably love this. They're cleaning up waste incredibly efficiently. But if some kind of design flaw means they never actually know when to stop, once they've eaten all the available waste, they'll start looking for something else to consume. Plastic, wood, metal, then plants, then animals, and eventually, us. Because they're multiplying exponentially, after just a few dozen replication cycles, their numbers could reach into the billions. At that point, humans wouldn't have any realistic way left to contain or destroy them all. Again, still just a hypothesis, but a similar idea actually showed up in the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. Number 9. The Antibiotic Resistance Crisis. Simply put, this is bacteria basically becoming immune to our medicine. And to be clear, it's not that our bodies stop responding to antibiotics. It's that bacteria evolve to the point where the drugs simply can't kill them anymore. The more we overuse antibiotics, taking them whenever, even when they're not actually necessary, instead of letting the body heal on its own, the faster this resistance process happens. And if bacteria eventually become resistant to most existing antibiotics, modern medicine basically grinds to a halt. A small wound, childbirth, even a routine appendix surgery could suddenly become life-threatening again. This one probably wouldn't lead to full extinction, but the consequences for human society would still be genuinely serious. Number 10. Nuclear war. As of 2026, there are still roughly 12,000 nuclear warheads in the world, most sitting in military stockpiles, ready to be used, if needed. The scariest scenario here isn't everyone launching at once. It's just a handful of nuclear powers going head-to-head, pulling their allies into it, and that alone would be enough for the entire world to feel the consequences. Today, most warheads mounted on intercontinental missiles are thermonuclear bombs, with far more destructive power than the two bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After nuclear detonations, hundreds of cities would burn, sending smoke and dust into the upper atmosphere and blocking out sunlight, similar to the supervolcano scenario we covered earlier. Global temperatures would drop sharply, but this time with radiation, layered on top, making the whole situation significantly worse. Number 11. Climate change. This is probably the scenario we hear about the most in the media. Simple version. Sunlight passes through the atmosphere and heats Earth's surface. Then Earth radiates that heat back out into space. Normally, most of that heat escapes. But greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane trap a portion of it, kind of like adding an extra blanket over the entire planet. A thin blanket keeps things comfortably warm. A blanket that keeps getting thicker eventually makes things too hot. As average temperatures rise, demand for electricity to power cooling systems rises right along with it. And if a heat wave over 40 degrees hits at the exact moment the power grid fails, that's a genuinely life-threatening situation, especially for the elderly and young children. But that's really just a side effect. Rising temperatures also mean longer droughts in some regions, while other regions get hit with extreme rainfall and flooding. Agriculture ends up being the first sector to really feel the impact. And when agriculture struggles, food becomes scarce, prices spike, and we end up right back at a familiar cycle. Food shortages, migration, economic crisis, social unrest, and eventually, conflict. Number 12. A massive asteroid. This one's probably the easiest to picture. One day, a chunk of rock the size of an entire city, or even a country, slams straight into Earth. And chances are, we'd end up sharing the same fate as the dinosaurs. Just like volcanic eruptions or nuclear war, what actually kills life off isn't the impact itself. If you're far from the impact site, you'd probably just feel some ground tremors. But the collision would throw billions of tons of dust into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight, dropping global temperatures, killing off plants, and destroying harvests. Same familiar pattern as before, except this time with tsunamis and a bunch of other consequences stacked on top. The good news is, humans have actually thought about how to fight back. NASA tested deflecting an asteroid's orbit in 2022 during the DART mission and successfully changed the trajectory of a small asteroid. Number 13. The death of our sun. Sounds dramatic, but really, the sun isn't collapsing. It's just aging. Right now, the sun is about 4.6 billion years old, and it'll keep burning for roughly another 5 billion years. Near the end of its life, it'll swell up and become a red giant. At that point, Mercury, Venus, and Earth all get swallowed whole. But honestly, we don't even need to wait that long. In just over 1 billion years, the sun's brightness will increase enough that oceans start evaporating, the greenhouse effect spirals completely out of control, and Earth stops being habitable altogether. If humanity still isn't capable of migrating elsewhere by then, extinction is essentially guaranteed. And this isn't a hypothesis. It's about as close to a certainty as science gets. It's just so far away that, for now, we can genuinely relax about it. Number 14. Transhumanism. Sounds like something out of a superhero movie, but this is a real, actual philosophical movement. The core idea: humans, as we currently exist, aren't the finished product. So why not use technology to upgrade ourselves? Live longer, get stronger, get smarter, eliminate disease, maybe even eliminate death itself? The term transhumanism was coined by biologist Julian Huxley back in 1957, and it's still a genuinely controversial topic today. Handled well, this is actually a pretty promising vision: healthier humans, fewer diseases. But every time you replace a piece of the human body with technology, you're also creating a new point of dependency. If your eyes are cameras, your brain has a chip, your heart runs on software. Who actually owns that data? What happens if it gets hacked? What if the company that made it goes bankrupt, stops issuing updates, or just locks the device remotely? Who's supposed to fix it then? And here's a genuinely strange thought. Maybe our descendants end up smarter, stronger, healthier, but different enough that they're no longer really considered the same species as humans today. Under this framing, humanity could technically go extinct. Not because we got wiped out, but because we evolved into something else entirely. And finally, number 15, the heat death of the universe. After making it through every single scenario on this list, we finally arrive at the ultimate final boss, the heat death of the universe. This one's based on the second law of thermodynamics. Simple version. To actually get anything done, you need a difference in energy levels. Water flows because there's a high point and a low point. A generator works because of a temperature difference. The sun shines because its interior is dramatically hotter than the empty space around it. But no energy source lasts forever. Over time, the universe keeps expanding. The raw material to form new stars keeps shrinking, and old stars burn out one by one. Even black holes, according to theory, will eventually evaporate completely through something called Hawking radiation. Eventually, at some point unimaginably far in the future, there won't be a single star left shining, no major energy source remaining, anywhere. Temperatures everywhere become almost perfectly uniform, and once there's no energy difference left, there's no chemical reaction, no biological process, absolutely nothing that could sustain life in any form. Whether humanity still has advanced technology or has migrated to some corner of the universe by then, it wouldn't matter. There'd be nowhere left that could support existence. Based on current models, this entire process would take roughly 10 to the power of 100 years to fully play out, a number so unimaginably large it barely even means anything to us. And that's 15 ways humanity might one day disappear. Not to scare you, just for fun, honestly.